Welcome back to Self Love Sunday, my dear sister and brother, if there is some men watching us as well. I'm so deeply grateful you are here, whether it's your first time or you are coming back to us, to me. I am happy you joined me today. And I'm assuming this is on your healing journey somewhere. So this is exciting and I'm proud of you. So today I want to talk about something that many kind people experience, but rarely is spoken about out loud. And it's why kindness is so often mistaken for lack of intelligence or lesser intelligence. Why is it that someone who is gentle, emotionally aware, generous to others, some people assume that they must also be naive, weak, somehow less intelligent, or even asking for being used and abused if you are following the pattern of thinking of narcissistic people, because they often feel entitled to your energy. So they think like even justified to use you. I'm not sure if that resonates with you, but that resonated with me definitely. Yeah. Because this is something that I experienced personally and something that I've observed around me over and over again. I see it within friends, acquaintances. So hopefully we can bring some more light to it. And I think it's time we talk about it honestly. So let's jump into the episode. So, what is the quiet strength of kind people, first and foremost? Because kindness is often misunderstood. In today's world, intelligence is often associated with qualities like dominance, quick arguments, sarcasm, cynicism, emotional detachment. How quickly you can put someone down, shut them down, right? So the loudest voice in the room often is perceived as the smartest one or the one to listen to. It's so easy to fall into that trap. Because if you are someone that considers other people's feelings, that probably sounds very familiar. But emotional awareness, patience, empathy, these qualities are rarely recognized as forms of intelligence. Yet they absolutely are. Being able to understand your own emotions, regulate them, respond thoughtfully to others requires deep psychological maturity. Because kind people often choose harmony over ego battles. They can sometimes appear quieter and less confrontational. But unfortunately, in certain environments, that quiet strength gets mistaken for weakness. And especially if you used to look at the other people's needs more than your own, and always also blaming yourself for situations in life, even if you were nowhere near to be blamed in real life, right? But you were made to think that you were to be blamed for situations and that was your responsibility to fix it. That means you had to build that inner self-awareness, right? You were looking at yourself in every single little detail. And that makes sense that you would build deep psychological awareness and maturity. Yeah? I remember one moment from my past relationship that really stayed with me that captures this dynamic quite well. We were sitting, me and my ex-partner, we were sitting in a pub with family members. There were his side of family members, lovely people, lovely conversation. As you would, you have a glass of wine or beer, having a nice meal, and having a nice chat. And one of the family members asked my ex-partner, asked actually, not just my ex-partner, but asked me and my ex-partner, so how do you inspire each other? What do you find inspirational in your other half? So myself, being the person that is always empowering people and loving them and admiring them, I listed qualities, right? I listed everything that I loved about him and how he's so fantastic in this and that and that. And when he was asked the same question, he said something that shocked me a little. He said, "She doesn't inspire me in any way." Just like that. And the interesting part about this, that at the time I did not react. I didn't defend myself. I didn't question it. I simply accepted it. And part of me even framed it as honesty, as if honesty made it somehow acceptable. At the time, this was my thinking, that I'd rather have the most brutal honesty than sweet lies. Because then if someone treats me tells me such things so straightforwardly in front of other people, then when they give me compliments, that must be a very genuine compliment. This was my thinking. But honestly, it's not the same as emotional cruelty. I was shrinking myself. Not dramatically, not visibly, but internally. Something small inside me folded inwards. It's like, it was like, it just stated a fact. And I was so emotionally aware of other people's needs. I was like, I have no right to tell him otherwise. He's allowed to think whatever he wants. Yeah. But the truth is, if someone repeatedly treats kindness as something lesser, you slowly begin to doubt the value of your own sensitivity, of your uniqueness, of how truly special you are. Why this kind of dynamic even happens? There's a few psychological reasons why kindness can be misunderstood this way. Of some of these, one of them is that people who operate from ego, insecurity, or narcissistic tendencies often rely on comparison to feel powerful. Yeah, so they have to elevate themselves by diminishing other people, by diminishing their accomplishments. So kind people, on the other hand, are often easier targets because they don't immediately retaliate. They think about other people's shoes, right? Like I did for my ex-partner. It's like, he has a right to think what he thinks. And that brings me to the point that kind people are highly empathetic. They are used to considering other people first, to avoid unnecessary conflict, to avoid spending that energy unnecessarily. But in a society that rewards aggression and dominance, this emotional awareness can be interpreted as naivety. And that interpretation is simply wrong. Kindness is not the lack of intelligence. Very often is the result of deep self-reflection and emotional insight, as I said before. You just have no other choice. When you're reflecting so much on what you did wrong, to become really aware of yourself, your patterns, and other people's patterns. Yeah, in reading the room. You're becoming really good in reading the room. There's also another layer to this conversation that I think affects women specifically. From very young age, many girls are told that one of their main sources of value is their appearance. So they are told from early age, you're beautiful, you're pretty, you're attractive. They are being objectified and pointed to thinking that, oh, this is how I get attention. And this happens sometimes long before anyone reflects back to them how they are so thoughtful, perceptive, intelligent. So the attention they receive is often connected to how they look rather than how they think. So oftentimes, over time, that shapes into an identity. So if your intelligence is not actively mirrored back to you, it can be difficult to recognize it within yourself. No wonder, right? Especially if you're not receiving that from very early on, even from your parents or closest family, closest friends. At the same time, many girls live with so-called good girl conditioning, being agreeable, being polite, being emotionally aware of other people. Yeah. So while those qualities are incredibly beautiful, they can sometimes be misunderstood in environments that reward that dominance and that loudness. Yeah. So kindness gets misread as naivety. Gentleness gets misread as weakness. It's a shame, honestly, but it was what it was, and it is what it is. But emotional awareness is not absence of intelligence. In fact, it often reflects a very sophisticated understanding of other people and of relationships. My love, kindness is not naivety. There is an important difference between being kind and being unaware. Kind people often see much more than they realize. They simply choose not to turn every observation into confrontation about this. They choose peace where possible. They choose understanding. They choose compassion. Yeah. But that doesn't mean they don't see what is really happening. And certainly doesn't mean that they lack intelligence. In fact, emotional intelligence, ability to understand people, navigate relationships, and stay grounded in your values is one of the most powerful forms of intelligence that there is. So for anyone that has ever been made to feel less intelligence because you're kind, gentle, and emotionally aware, I want you to hear this. Your kindness is not a flaw in any way, shape, or form. It is not. Your kindness and sensitivity is not stupidity. Although you may have been feeling that way, that you're being taken advantage of. Therefore, you must be stupid. No. Your empathy is not weakness. It's a powerful tool to recognize who is who, what is what. Very often, these qualities are signs of inner strength. Deep, deep inner strength. Because, guess what? It's much easier to be cynical and like cold and dismissive than compassionate. And it's much easier to ignore other people than understand them. It's much easier to dominate conversation than to listen with care. So perhaps what you're looking at is really a superpower. Yeah. The world does not always reward kindness instantly, but that doesn't mean that the kindness that you carry is not of value. In fact, many people who carry genuine kindness often bring into this world something that is incredibly rare, and that is safety. You make others feel seen. You make others feel understood. And that kind of presence is much more powerful than winning arguments or appearing intellectually superior. So if you are a kind person, perhaps it's time for you to stop shrinking. Please do not believe the narratives that kindness makes you somehow smaller or less important or less intelligent. Your emotional depth is a form of intelligence that this world needs so much more of. We need you. And the right people will recognize it. Yeah. And maybe, just maybe, some of us spent our entire life looking into the wrong mirrors. When we were younger, many of us had only one mirror that clearly reflected us. And that was the physical mirror. The one that you used to put on makeup, to comb your hair, to look into your own eyes. So we could see what we look like. But mirrors around us that were supposed to reflect our minds, our perception, our intelligence, were often distorted. Sometimes people only reflect back our appearance. Sometimes they reflect their own insecurities. So projection. Sometimes they simply didn't see us clearly at all. And when you grow up, surrounded by distorted mirrors, it becomes very easy to believe that the reflection must be true. But here's something worth considering. What if the reflection was wrong all your life? What if the intelligence was always there, but no one around you had the clarity to mirror it back to you? No one had that kind of greatness that you carry within themselves, therefore they couldn't recognize it within you. Because, as we already learned, intelligence doesn't always look loud. It doesn't always interrupt people in conversations. It doesn't always need to prove itself. Sometimes intelligence looks like a quiet observation. Sometimes it looks like empathy. Sometimes it looks like ability to understand people and patterns in ways others don't even notice. And if you have spent years believing that your kindness meant you were someone that is less intelligent, guess what? There is a very real possibility that the opposite is true. You may simply have been standing in front of the wrong mirrors. See that miracle light on me? That might be a bit disruptive for you, but looks kind of cool. I'll close my shutters a little bit. So you may have simply been looking into the wrong mirrors. And the beautiful thing about adulthood is that we get to choose new mirrors. We get to surround ourselves with people who see us more clearly. People who reflect not only how we look, but how we think, how we perceive, and how deeply we understand the world. So, if today you are beginning to question the old reflection you were given, that is not confusion. That is in fact you leaving the confusion and your clarity stepping in as a driving force. And it might be the moment that you finally start seeing yourself the way you were always meant to be seen, which is pretty freaking awesome and gorgeous. And maybe today you will see you're not only gorgeous on the outside, but how gorgeous you were all along. Gorgeous, rich, beautiful within yourself, in your soul, in your heart, in your mind. And this is it for this week's episode. I hope you found it helpful. I hope it resonated. And I hope it gave you some new hope. I hope it gave you hope. We can only hope for hope. Thank you for listening. Have a blessed week. And I hope to see you next time. Take good care of your heart, because it's been through a lot.